First of all, I'd like to point out this article wasn't made to prove me right. It was made in 2011, several years before my 2013 Top Martial Arts Challenge on December 20th. The point of this article is to get women, especially feminists, to start encouraging other women to stop being bullies, to stop being saboteurs, to stop embracing that part of Western culture that promotes the dog-eat-dog mentality so that women can attain respectable positions in the workplace, which I'm sure to some degree they deserve, and so that they can start making progress. A consequence of this article is proving definitively, really, if you really use your insight and couple your insight and your logic and what you see every day with the studies she's referring to in the article itself, that I have been treated unfairly, and women owe me for years of psychological whippings. And we'll get into that later, psychological warfare. The article itself is titled, "The Psychological Warfare of Women. Are We Our Worst Enemy?" 2011, Susan Tardanico. And there's a lot of martial arts philosophies and similar philosophies that would argue that people are their worst enemies. And I would go as far as to say, yes, you have very serious enemies out there. But you indeed are your worst enemy because you refuse to find the courage to transcend that I personally believe all people have, or else I wouldn't be so hard on them and I wouldn't have tried to help them. I wouldn't have been bound by honor to try to help them. So around 5 minutes or so, I believe the images on the screen will stop showing. So let me start to go through this, okay? Ra is the definition that they use in the article. Relational aggression. Ra, R-A, relational aggression. So it's really Ra defined, right? Muscle definition, the mind refined, defined. Okay, the mind defined, the mind refined. Okay, the soul defined, the soul refined. The spirit defined and refined. God defined, and your ideas of what he really is, refined. So Ra defined versus redefined. The right angles is another way to look at Ra from the spiritual perspective, the Egyptian Sun Temple martial arts perspective, versus relational aggression. I'd also like to note this dog-eat-dog culture makes it so that the West had to redefine what intelligence itself is and have eugenicists make the prerequisites, the old IQ tests, if you will, statisticians, eugenicists, Francis Galton and his network. And then it led to the modern IQ test and similar tests, which test for the specific kind of female spirit-heavy form of intelligence. As a result, we have women making up more than half the workforce, and they tend to score better, if I'm not mistaken, in school, and there's more women in higher education. So absolutely in favor of that. So women are embracing the unwise forms of intelligence that make them victims of society. Ignore, right? Ignore my truths, and ignorance are connected. So they are the victims of society, ignorance, and themselves. Again, the article is "The Psychological Warfare of Women. Are We Our Worst Enemy?" Response-able, right? Can you respond? Are you ignoring what I'm saying out of ignorance? Are you going to respond with your works and submission to the truth and the Spirit of God through me if you follow that train of thought to its finish? Or are you irresponsible? Are you ignorant? Are you going to ignore it? I'm not saying that women don't have the potential to be responsible or even to be wise. I am saying they are making the decisions to be irresponsible and unwise, which is a similar conclusion that this woman, Susan Tardanico, who made the article, has come to. She uses the example of a female named Kathleen. It starts off with groups whispering and glancing in her direction. Very similar to gang stalking, mind you, which is very much a kind of female perspective of how to sabotage people, right? Men are more direct. We'll get into that shortly. Okay? The weeks to follow, there was rumors about her. She's left out of the loop. She's left out of group lunches, drinks and so on. It then follows that she feels alone emotionally, abandoned, and caught unaware. Witnesses did nothing about it, and supposedly the author says I witnessed it, something to that effect. The author witnesses she did nothing about it. I think it was very, very respectable that she noted that and assigned blame to herself. That's one way to kind of get people to stop acting like immature little kids. We'll get into that momentarily. She describes this relational aggression, which has everything to do with relationships, mind you. Relationships between men and women. Relationships between women and each other. And women and their families and so on. The single most damaging and often used weapon in a woman's arsenal. Right? This is how women attack people. They don't go around beating them up commonly. That's not as effective. They're going to go to prison. They may as well shoot themselves in both feet and then pistol whip you with a gun. No, it is the single most damaging and often used weapon in a woman's arsenal. Okay? This thing, the emotional devastation can last for years or even a lifetime. That's what she said in her own article. I agree. I brought this up and I compared rape to being shunned. Being shunned is worse. You're reminded by and triggered by women's behavior every day. Most people who are raped, they don't think of it all the time. We think about how we're being shunned by women all the time. And if we are men of high moral worth who need to plant their seed to make the world a better place over time, it is very tragic, very damaging. And the urgency to correct it is heartbreaking when it plays out. Yes, give me a moment.
Okay, I just, your father's in the shower, so.
All right.
You know.
Anyway, like I was saying, it's the single most damaging and often used weapon in a woman's arsenal. They compare the playground, junior high activities. You know, they say, okay, this is basically like the immature stuff that happens on the playground. Okay? That's what she says. And she says they need to move on to, quote unquote, more mature venues. Mature venues, right? It's immature. It's immature bitch shit. They need to grow up. They need to stop sabotaging and bullying. They need to accept their rightful place in society, whether they're demoted or not. They need to stop trying to hold down people who would perhaps naturally surpass them, or at least would put up a formidable form of competition. You see what I'm saying? See how this has everything to do with how they sabotaged my challenge? I was very direct. I said, here is $4,000, 4-year challenge. At one point, I raised it to $100,000 when it was getting really heated up, when I was getting trolled by dozens of people a day, you know, or at least on the more troll-like days, right? Okay, I raised the bar. There were countless people aware of my challenge, and I raised it to $100,000 at one point. What did they choose? What form of action did they choose to man up, right? That masculine energy that is what the martial artist is, right? Why are there weight classes? How does maneuverability factor in? And that's in terms of fighting. I think in terms of outmaneuvering, focusing testosterone and having the brain structure to do so. And I go over the cerebellum, the hippocampus, the striatum, the amygdala, the thalamus, the gray matter, the white matter. And I went over this several times now. Brain structure. How it also proves my point, not just with empirical evidence, what we observe, but what science has thoroughly recorded to the point of no return. They have to concede, or they're irresponsible, or they're ignoring, and so they're ignorant. Right? They're ignorant and they're irresponsible. And they're delusional because they're forcing themselves to follow suit with delusional thinking, illogical thinking, immoral, and really cowardly thinking. The behavior of women triggers memories and worsens social rejection. Okay, I went over that. We look at the word intimacy, has the word time, right? Intimacy. Timid, right? Timid, with the wordplay applied, is I add or time add. Time add, timid. Now think about that. When are you timid? Why are you timid? Is not your perspective? How others respond to your perspective? If I walk into a clans meeting as a black man and I'm kind of trying to play it off or something, right? I'm in the back and they're all kind of distracted. Do I have a good reason to be timid? Does it matter really what my perspective is? So it doesn't. So the environment can make even people who seem to be the most extroverted and outspoken timid. I therefore assert that the environment is the determinant when it comes to people feeling social anxiety or shyness. It's stupid not to see it that way. It's right there in the wordplay on top of that. Okay. So we think about maintenance and empowerment. Intimacy, maintenance, and empowerment. Am I empowered when I date a beautiful woman who praises me for how I am? Yes. If they're praising corporate filth and shunning me, does that affect me psychologically? Is that a form of psychological warfare? Yes. If they're putting me down on top of that, yes. If they're subtly implying that they're sexually promiscuous and sleeping with the enemy all the time, yes. Is it stupid not to see it that way? Yes. Should you make the argument that I should transcend and ignore it and that's all there is to it? No. This has serious sociological effects, long-term effects. This has everything to do with the direction of humanity and our children, or at least man's children, if you will. It has everything to do with morality and being right with God when you die and passing on and conveying and transferring a spirit of righteousness to the next generation and not a dog-eat-dog, pitiful, covert, bitch-made perspective. Women are seen as gentle, less confrontational, less competitive, and more empowering for that reason. Maintenance and empowerment, intimacy and empowerment. They're empowering the oppressor when they sleep with them. They're disempowering, they're disenfranchising, they're marginalizing, they're doing psychological warfare on the victim when they shun him. And if he's tall and handsome and in great martial arts shape and he's the top martial artist and he has the other ones hiding, what does that say about them? How can you not see that this can't be emphasized enough? If children are being raped and killed and everyone's playing stupid, should you shut up about it just because they're not listening? Or should you keep trying to articulate your point? Come on. This is not being the top martial artist here. This is him breaking it down in a way that you can understand with your language that comes from your ancestors more than the ones that are expressing themselves through me. The argument that it can be done effectively, right? The covert. Women are more covert, so it's on the table versus under the table. Men put things on the table. Here's my problem. This is everything on the table. Okay, that's their intention. So when they start being covert to a certain degree, they're expressing bitch-made shit. The two political parties say, we're putting it on the table, but they're being disingenuous and covering things up, right? A political cover-up. You know, scandals that are covered up, right? They're acting like bitches. They're bitch-made scandals that bitches would do, and they're covering it up like a little junior high school bitch. They're being covert about it. This is her. This is what she said too. She agrees. Men put it on the table. They man up. Women are covert and work through other people and third parties. Fuck, I need to go through a third party too. I'm a man. Let's talk man to man. Anyway. So she thinks it can be done carefully and with positive intent. I think for the most part that she's wrong about that. But she doesn't admit that it's more likely that it's going to be damaging and counterproductive. And revenge and to further their agenda is most of the reason why women take this covert method. All right, so, and of course that's mainstream feminism in a nutshell. Revenge and furthering their agenda. So we see smear campaigns, spreading malicious rumors, gossiping or icing someone out. And I'll go over that in the next video. As something that's cited in the article. I believe I put it in the images in the beginning of this video. So they say women don't help the victim. Women are tougher on each other and support female leaders less than the male ones, and so on. We see this very much. This is like black people. This is like various groups of people. They're tough on each other, and they don't support each other really. And that is kind of the design of society. They break people down into groups and subgroups, and they're tough on each other for not being enough like the expectations of the people who made the grand design. Okay, it doesn't take a genius to see that, right? The house nigga versus the field nigga, the dog-eat-dog society, crabs in a barrel, and so on and so forth. So there are theories that have to do with the real and perceived lack of power and low self-esteem, conditioned behavior. The evolutionary psychologists' claim of a deep-rooted instinct to protect young and compete for resources is claimed. The solutions, they say, are the sufficient awareness. Notice it's not honing your awareness to the highest degree, but she uses the term sufficient, right? Sufficient awareness and a healthier view of our own personal power, women can control or eliminate this psychological warfare.